everybody, welcome back to another CIE panel. My name is Zaleen or Zikin, and I'll be your host for today. And I am joined with the lovely, the one and only Mr. Sean Frame. How are you doing, Sean? What's up?
I'm doing great. That was an amazing intro. It's very high energy and excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being part of this panel, as well as BMO for sponsoring all of CIE so far, as well as BMO's Next Level. But before we get into it, I'd like to start off with just an introductory question. Kind of talked about this a little bit off the camera, but give me your introduction. Let the audience know what is BMO Next Level, what has your experience or your kind of career path been looking like with BMO, and just the floor is yours.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you said, my name is Sean. I don't think I need to reiterate that, but I'm very an egotist, so I'm gonna do that again.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've been with the bank for 10 years. I actually was a student of journalism, media convergence, all that kind of stuff, and was a radio producer for a little bit. And
Mhm.
transitioned careers in my mid 20s to banking. And I started off as a CSR, like a teller. So when you go into a branch, those are the
Mhm.
employees that you talk to and you meet right away at the desk. Eventually made my way up to a personal banker, someone doing loans and investments and all those kinds of things. So I've been in the financial world for quite some time. I've been in the gaming world my whole life, which has
Mhm.
revolved around gaming pretty much. I've been gaming since I was a little kid. And I
Mhm.
got this unique opportunity to become part of BMO's kind of gaming financial literacy channel. So basically, BMO launched BMO Next Level, and they were looking for employees in the bank. So they could have went two directions. Of course, they could have found a
Mhm.
streamer who knew a little bit about financial literacy and have them go in and play games and all that kind of stuff. But they looked internally because obviously, their staff, they know financial literacy because they're preaching it and practicing it every day.
Mhm.
So I had a chance to audition. I made this amazing audition tape that you will
Mhm.
never see.
Oh, I'm gonna ask for it. I'll find it somewhere. Somewhere in the internet, I know
It
it's
is on the
there.
internet
Okay.
somewhere. But
Mhm.
essentially, like the ask was to make a video using gaming to explain financial literacy. And at the time,
Mm.
this is completely kind of selfish, but at the time, Elden Ring was pretty new.
Mhm.
And I was a dad. I had a 4-year old. So that's all I was doing was playing Elden Ring. I was being a dad, going to work, coming home, being a
Mhm.
dad, playing a little bit of Elden Ring. So I made a
Mhm.
video basically explaining investing using Elden Ring. It was a pretty um, simple idea. Basically, in Elden Ring, you get runes, you use those to level up. So what I did was I went and I fought a giant boss.
Mm.
It wasn't actually a boss; it's just like one of the world spawn bosses.
Mhm.
And I lost immediately, and I lost all my runes. So I said, "Well, what if
Mm.
I invest my runes in myself to potentially get returns?"
Oh,
And then I went and
okay.
I beat the boss after investing and stuff like that. So after that, got had to do a live audition, which was interesting. I actually got to play Minecraft and talk about mortgages live, which was pretty fun.
Okay.
and uh, and then from there, yeah, like we launched May 4 years ago, right around this time, with some streams talking about financial literacy. We had some esports royalty on there, Wardell. We did a
Mhm.
stream with Mtash, who's another Canadian streamer, and
Mhm.
it's just been going ever since. I mean, we've changed a little bit, we've learned a lot, but still going strong. Still, the priority, like I said, is teaching financial literacy because, and I think we talked about this before, but
Mhm.
financial literacy has the potential to be a bit dry. It's not a
Mhm.
topic that's very interesting unless you need it, right? If you
Mhm.
need it, then it's like I need all this information because I need it. But being prepared is always way more important than kind of learning in the moment. I was not very fortunate when I was younger, like when I was 18,
Mhm.
19, 20, even when I was in high school, like there was no financial literacy program.
Mhm.
It was kind of the reliance of the parents to teach you financial literacy. So if your parents were
Yeah.
pretty financial savvy, like they would teach you financial literacy. And if my mom and dad are watching this, which I don't think they are, apologies, but they are not very financial literacy savvy. So I didn't learn
Okay.
anything until I needed it. So if I
Mhm.
maxed out my credit card and now I need to pay it off, who knew that that was going to hurt my credit, and who knew? So I kind of learned
Mhm.
by doing. So I'm very passionate about this because knowledge is power, and it's good to know these things before you dive into it. Here in
Mhm.
Ontario, actually, interestingly enough, I think it was either last year or 2 years ago, they introduced as a part of grade 10 math, you actually have to take a financial literacy test now. So it is part of
Wow.
curriculum now in Ontario,
Thank
but it's still
God.
something that's pretty widely unknown. Yeah, but you can't go back and go to grade not you probably wouldn't want to go back and retake grade 10 just to learn
I of
financial literacy.
course
So,
not, but, like, definitely, like, back in high school, like, that would've been really helpful to set me up for success
oh
as an
yeah,
adult, right?
a
And,
hundred
as you
percent.
talked about, I feel like, we also any of the viewers who are actually watching, if you're very well involved or well-versed within, like, the collegiate esports sphere in Canada, BMO and BMO Next Level has been super involved with a lot of these esports clubs, programs, initiatives, so really love that. But also, Sean, you are also very uniquely qualified, not only understanding the gaming kind of atmosphere, the community, since you've been part of it since you were a kid, and well versed in a lot of different video games as well. But also, you've been in banks, you know how important it is as a student yourself. You've made mistakes back and forth, or whether that would be with credit cards or maybe with budgeting. That I feel like a lot of the students who are watching our panel right now might be able to relate and want to learn about. Talking about financial literacy, we've been kind of tossing this term back and forth. No, I'll start it off real simple. What is financial literacy? What does that entail, and why is that important to learn or be aware of when you're an adult?
Yeah, basically financial literacy, it kind of spans a lot of topics. Like there's not just one topic that kind of falls under financial literacy, but it's basically having the knowledge to understand your finances, which leads to things like financial empowerment.
Mm,
There's pretty basic financial literacy, and then more kind of extreme financial literacy. But in a shell, it's just understanding finances, having those skills to make financial decisions, to make a budget, to make investments, knowing that, which is very empowering. Financial literacy is important because it's a part of our everyday life. Like I would say, it's probably the top of everybody's mind. Like I have never met an individual who wasn't either worried about money or had to do something with money. Like,
mhm,
of course, I've never lived in the wilderness, so maybe there's people out there like that. But financial literacy is super important because it's everywhere. Everything you do has some kind of semblance of financial literacy. Going to school, like that's a huge financial step. Like post secondary school, huge
mm,
financial step because for one, you have to pay for school. A lot of people move away from home, like you have to manage your own finances, and that's really like kind of the crucial time to start empowering yourself and learning different things about finances so you can
mhm,
have financial literacy. Financial
mhm,
literacy is not only the knowledge, but it's also a skill like that you need to
mm.
practice, much like gaming. That's why there's such a
Yes.
good fit between financial literacy, and gaming, because they all involve a lot of knowledge, a lot of quick reflexes at some point, but also yeah, a lot of training and a lot of practice. So
Mhm,
it's all about empowerment, and like starting early, like having a good solid foundation for financial literacy will set you up for success in life. If I in high school, I was the
mhm.
first. I sound like an old man when I say in high school, but I was the first person to have two, not only one job, but two jobs. I was tearing down weddings and working at a fast food institution. And I
Institution,
had
I like that.
institution. And I had, yeah, it sounds more professional if you're ever writing a resume and you
Mhm,
worked at like a fast food place, fast food institution.
mhm,
So, I had I had a bunch of disposable income and no expenses basically.
mhm,
So imagine now I'm in my mid 30s now, like thinking back to all that money I was making, I could have done so much with it. And future Sean, which is current Sean now, would have
mhm.
been way more comfortable. So
Loaded.
yeah, well, maybe not. Well, who knows? I mean, things were a lot cheaper back then. So,
Mhm.
but I could be a millionaire. Who knows?
Oh, you hear
Yeah.
that, guys? Early investment equals potential, or early financial literacy equals potential millionaire in your 30s, mid
There's a lot of
30s.
potential outcomes from
Mhm,
knowing how to manage your money from a young age. So,
mhm,
um, but we'll never know. You never know. And a lot of people, that's how they learn about finances or obtain
mhm.
financial literacy is just by doing. And that's exactly what happened with me. And I think that's exactly what happens with a lot of people, which is,
Mhm.
once again, why I'm so passionate about it because it's so important. My son, he's 4, and
Mhm.
he has already set up way more than I am when I
Mhm.
was 20, because we teach him the value of money, we teach him to save, and all
Mhm.
this kind of stuff. And he's very, he's very passionate about it because he understands. Here's the thing. Here's the scenario. Okay, my
Mhm.
son really wants this Lego Hogwarts train. Okay, it's
Mhm.
like $250. Uh,
Whew.
and so he's saving and saving and saving, and he'll sometimes see a toy, and we spoil him because he's
Mhm.
adorable and he's sweet and he's very smart. But
Mhm.
he'll sometimes see a toy, and we'll go, "Oh, we don't have enough money for that." And he's like, "Oh, I have enough money in my savings." And we're like, "Okay, but if you spend this,
Mm.
you won't be able to do this later on and do that." And he's very good at like making those decisions at 4. Where I
Mhm.
think when I was 25, I got OSAP and I
Mm.
bought a PS4 or something like that. Like, where,
Yeah.
whereas I was is still in my mid 20s making very impulsive decisions.
Mhm.
He is more set up for success now. So maybe if he becomes a millionaire, we'll be able to confirm if
Mhm.
early financial literacy adoption
He
means
will
you'll
be
become a millionaire.
our little case study, BMO's case
Yeah.
study, BMO next
BMO case
level
study.
case
Yeah,
study.
exactly. Our little
But I
experiment.
mean, it sounds like, financial literacy is kind of like a muscle. You have to practice it. You have to kind of, understand the basics, but then also practice it in your daily lives and be able to kind of make these conscious decisions. But going into financial literacy, I think one of my first introductions and why kind of financial literacy was so important was actually credit cards. And I think credit cards as a young adult, you just come into university, you go to these club fairs where, a bunch of these different banks are offering these offers for students. So that, oh, if you get this credit card, you can get, this 0% interest for like the first, however months. But let's go into just introduction of credit cards in general. So what are credit cards? How does someone obtain a credit card? And are there any requirements for credit cards?
Yeah, so credit cards very easily explained is a card that allows you to borrow money basically instantaneously from a financial institution. So it's not actual money that you have, but it is accessible to you to
Mm-hmm.
borrow and to use and to pay back. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to credit cards themselves, you can get one as long as you're the age of majority wherever you live. So here in Ontario, age of majority is 18.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's 19 in other provinces. And to get one, you simply have to apply. There are certain things that go into the consideration of an application, which is like when you apply for anything, there's going to be consideration. There's
Mm-hmm.
first going to be a credit check, and then a few other things. The good news is if you're a student and you just turned 18, you don't have any credit. You don't have bad
Mm-hmm.
credit. You don't have any credit. Having just so you know, having zero credit is not as bad as having bad credit. It just means you haven't
Mm-hmm.
established credit. And I guess also
Mm-hmm.
that's hyper dependent on where you are in life as well. But when you're young and you're able to kind of apply for a credit card when you reach the age of majority, that's when you're going to start establishing credit. So when you go into the application, you're not going to have any credit history, unless
Mm-hmm.
you're older or whatever. But right at the age of majority, you're not going to have any credit history. So there's going to be a number of other things that they're going to rely on. First and foremost is like income. Income,
Mm-hmm.
like where are you getting income doesn't mean like you have a job and you're getting paid. Yes, that is income technically, but income can come from your parents, can come from investments, can come from um, yeah, like your parents' investments, can come from student loans, that kind of thing. So income is important. And then another thing that a lot of students end up doing for their student loans specifically, and sometimes for credit cards,
Mm-hmm.
is having like a secondary account holder or go in with someone who's like basically a guarantor for that loan. So those are a
Mm-hmm.
couple of things that they look into. Luckily, when you're a student, it's a lot easier to get approved for a credit card, especially if you're applying for a specific student credit card. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so credit cards, like I said, in summary, it's just kind of an easy, accessible way to borrow money on the fly. Very good for emergencies or everyday purchases, and stuff like that. There's credit cards aren't inherently bad.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I hear people they're like, oh, but aren't credit cards bad or applying for credit cards bad? Not
Mm-hmm.
inherently. It's all about how you use them, right? So
Mm-hmm. Like whether you're a credit card person or not. And you're talking about, people who have these kind of misconceptions about credit cards being kind of either a black or white kind of formulation of like, oh, it's good or it's bad, right? So what are some common mistakes people make with credit cards or some common misconceptions that you can address about credit cards in general?
Yeah, so common mistakes, and I think I alluded to this earlier on, but common mistakes are because it is something that I did when I was young, is maintaining a balance on your credit card isn't inherently bad and isn't inherently going to bring down your credit score. It's hyper
Mhm,
dependent on how high is that balance, first and foremost,
mhm,
and how often you are paying it down. So when you have a credit card, normally you have to pay a minimum payment if you're maintaining a balance. And
mhm,
usually it's like 2% or $50, whichever is greater. And then there's also some interest kind of accumulated onto that. So
mhm,
one thing that people do without realizing is they'll have a balance there because they're like, oh, I'm making the minimum payments. It's all good. And yes, you know what? It is good in the sense of like your credit card's not going to be taken away. But there are couple of few considerations. First and foremost, you're paying interest every month. So when you're
mhm,
maintaining a balance and only paying the minimum payment, you're basically paying the max amount of interest you could while making payments. And then secondly, credit score. So your credit score, which in Canada is between 300 and 900.
mhm,
Generally speaking, to build credit, you want to have how much you're using, which is called credit utilization, under 30% in an ideal world.
mm,
Obviously, like everybody's situation is different. Ideally, you want to have it below 30%. So if you're maxing out your credit card at 100%, making the minimum payments, even though you are practicing, kind of a good habit of paying it, which is good. Payments are more important than kind of factoring in everything else afterwards. But maintaining a balance over that 30% could potentially hurt your credit. So that's one thing
mhm,
that happens to individuals is they have a credit card and they max it out thinking, you know what, I'll just pay it down, pay it down, pay it down. And we kind of get stuck in this trap. And this is very much what happened to me in my 20s was I was just
mhm,
paying so much interest. I could never make a dent on the actual principal on it. So it kept
mhm,
adding up to the point where it was actually over my credit limit. So it was tanking my
mm,
credit. I was making the minimum payments, but it wasn't really doing anything for me. So that's one thing that can hurt you with a credit card. Does that mean maintaining a balance is bad? No. Does that mean using your credit card is risky? I guess potentially. But kind of a good habit to practice is using your credit card and then paying it off
mhm,
entirely if you can, making more than the minimum payment for sure, or paying it below that 30%. That's super going to help your credit. But the reason for that is credit cards normally have rewards. So, for example,
mm,
BMO has the student cashback MasterCard. So the reward there is the cashback. So every time you make a purchase, you get cashback. It's not
mhm.
someone doesn't show up at your door and throw a wad of cash at you. That'd be pretty sick. But
That'd be pretty funny though.
yeah, it'd be hilarious, concerning, but also awesome. But basically,
Mhm,
like it builds up in your account.
mhm,
So some good habits that you could practice is if I'm buying groceries or something, even if I have the cash or I have money on my debit card, I'll use my credit card because I get that cash back, and then I'll pay it off entirely. So I'm doing two things that benefit me really.
mhm,
I'm paying off my credit card on time, maintaining that credit history, that good credit history, and I'm paying down the balance so I don't have
mhm,
over that revolving utilization. But I'm also getting rewarded for doing that. So I'm getting
mhm,
cash back. And there's people who, by the way, who like work the system. Like they have like 10
mhm,
credit cards. I'm not recommending this, by the way, but they have 10 credit cards where they're like, oh, now I have this much in optimum points. This like they're just like
mhm,
working those point systems. I That's not something I do. I'm very financially savvy, but I don't think I have
mhm,
the patience to do that.
mhm,
Another common misconception is using your credit card charges you interest. That's
mhm,
not true. Credit cards have something called a statement date. It usually happens in the middle of the month. I would say like around the 15th, but it does fluctuate.
mhm,
If I use my credit card today and I've
mhm,
used like, I don't know, like $100 and then I pay it off tomorrow, I'm not getting charged any interest because I'm not
mhm,
maintaining a balance. It didn't make it to the end of the month. So basically, as long as you're not maintaining a balance by the time the statement comes live, you're not paying any interest. Another
mhm.
common misconception too is a lot of people do cash advances from their credit cards. That actually charges you more interest than just using your credit card. Um,
Yeah. Mhm,
so that's something to be cognizant as well. And if you're ever wondering, what are the two interest rates, you could always call and check. You could check online, or
mhm,
you could ask me. I mean, I don't know every interest rate of every financial institution, but it's pretty easy
mhm.
to find online. So
For sure. One of the things that for credit cards in particular that I learned in like in my early 20s was, the 30% utilization that you said. By kind of making sure that my overall balance for my credit card is below the 30% and kind of like repeatedly paying it off as much as I can. Like that's kind of like a signal to your bank as well as like your lender that, oh, this is a responsible credit card holder. So that's how your credit score can be impacted positively, by maintaining that. And also, if you're kind of curious, like let's first say, for example, you're a student, your credit card limit's $1,000, but you want to maintain a 30% utilization, but still spend more than, of course, like $300. You can always apply to kind of get your credit card limit increased a little bit. But of course, when you're a student, there are some limitations to that because you don't really have a fixed income in that sense. But yeah, no, that kind of relates to your credit score and kind of touching about credit score. What exactly is a credit score? Why is that important for, later on when you're older adult and you're kind of going for, buying a car or, going for like loans for a house? So why is that so important?
Yeah, I think actually, I might not even need to be here. You might be the next game analysis specialist because you kind of hit what a credit score was,
Mm,
like right off the cuff there.
mhm.
Basically, like I said, like numerically, it's between 300 and 900. 900 being perfect, 300 being like really poor. I
Really
guess is the
bad.
like really bad. Yeah. But yeah, essentially, like your credit score, if you think about it this way, is basically showing lenders how likely you are to pay back their loan. In a
Mhm,
nutshell, that's the easiest way to think about it. There is a lot of more nuance that kind of goes into that, but that's kind of the easiest way to think about it. Your credit score, why is it important? Because every facet in life, unless you have a bunch of money, is going to
mhm,
require some kind of credit application. Whether you want to buy a house, you want to buy a car, even if you want a cell phone,
mm,
usually you have to have a credit score. Some jobs require credit background checks and stuff like that.
mhm,
So something to be cognizant of, and that's why it's important. Your credit score and your credit report is basically your history with loans. So it's kind of
mhm,
like your loan resume, if it's easier to kind of think about it like that, where it's going to show you how many kind of credit facilities you have. So how many credit cards, loans, those kind of things that you have. It's going to show you your payment history. It's going to show you if you've ever
mhm,
missed a payment. It's going to show you basically if there's fraud on your account. So outside of just
mhm.
good credit information, it's a good way to know if your identity's been stolen as well.
Yeah,
Um, which happens, it happened to one of my best friends. Like he had a bunch of accounts all over Canada. And luckily, he didn't have to pay it back. But I'm sure it's extremely stressful to
mhm,
go through. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head of like what exactly is credit and why it's important. For students, it's important too,
mhm,
because I know for myself, I had to get OSAP to go to school. Like credit is involved and does play a role into some
mhm,
student financing as well. Maybe not your credit, maybe your
mhm,
parents' credit and stuff like that. But who knows? One day, if you're anything like me, you might become a parent, and then your credit score is going to be
mhm,
doubly important because then it's going to be kind of the difference between, can my son get a loan if I need to like be
mhm,
the guarantor or that kind of thing. So a
mhm,
lot of aspects of life involve credit. I am a credit fiend. I'm one of those
mm,
people who I have my alerts set up. So, self plug time. But BMO has this thing that they just created, and I talk about it a lot. And it sounds like I'm trying to sell something, but I just think it is so cool. Like I've
mhm,
nerded out about it a lot, but it's called Credit Coach, and essentially what it is
mhm,
is uh, and a lot of like apps have like ways you can check your credit for free without kind of dinging your score. But Credit
mhm,
Coach, essentially what it is it's personalized. So if I'm doing something that hurts my credit, it tells me exactly what it is, and it kind of gives me behaviors that I
mhm,
could do to potentially improve it. And every month, middle of the month, I get a notification in my email, and it's like your credit has changed, and I'm checking it right away. I'm like, What's
mhm.
going on?" Which is a
Yeah.
good habit to practice because, and I kind of alluded to this as well, but it's a good habit to practice because first and foremost, financial knowledge empowerment is important. But secondly, it shows you your credit history, and it could potentially show you if there's any kind of like fraud or anything on your account. That's how a lot of people find out that maybe
Mhm,
their account has been hacked because they check their credit report and they're like, I have a credit card here. I never applied for a credit card here. Or I have a
Mhm.
loan in collections that I never even received money for. Like, or my address is somewhere that I don't live. Like, these are kind
Mhm.
of important habits to have, especially when it comes to your finances. So you don't kind of fall into the trap of like, I have all this fraud on my account. I had no idea about it.
Mhm.
Something happened to me, which is super pertinent for students who are using like student loans. I myself am in Ontario. I used federal slash provincial student loan, OSAP.
Mhm. Same.
And essentially, when you're done school, or at least this is how it was, I'm pretty sure it's still the same. When you're
Mhm.
done school, you get 6 months. You don't have to pay anything back when it
Mhm.
comes to your OSAP. It's called a repayment assistance period. And then after those 6 months, you start making payments. OSAP, for some reason, as soon as I graduated, put me that I should have been making payments, and I had no idea. So I applied for a credit card, I and I got refused, which was weird because I was working for the company that I applied for the credit card with. So I'm like,
There's just like,
I was like,
"Nope."
what is happening? But what had
Mhm.
happened was OSAP thought I was supposed to be paying them, and I
Mhm.
wasn't. So they sent my account to collections, and it dinged my credit
Oh.
so bad. So if I had
Yeah.
been regularly checking my credit, I could have seen that. Because it does
Mhm.
it does take, I think, like they say, like up to 90 days to potentially fix a mistake on their end. So
Mhm.
important to check your credit is the moral of that story.
100%. And talking about these kind of mistakes that people can make that impact their credit scores, what I'll start it off, I'll toss the topic to you. One of the things that, I learned about, which I also yell at my friends for, because some of them are maybe a little bit impulsive in some of the financial decisions that they make, I would say, is for credit cards, like, you don't really ever want to close any of your credit cards if you can help it. One of the ways, even if you're not using like credit card, you open multiple ones, is just doing some like minimum payments. Do you have any subscription to any like music service like Spotify, Apple Music, or anything like that? Keep that on. So because the minute you try to close that account or close your credit card, that's all your history that you kind of talked about, your credit history gone, right? So then you don't really have, when you close all that like credit card history, it's when you try to go for loans in the future, that you are missing a big chunk of your credit history, which can really impact loans or any things that you decide to do. So that's like a common mistake or a common action I think people do that can really negatively affect your credit score and also impact you in the future. And I'll pass this question over to you. Like, what other kind of common mistakes do people do that like really impact their credit score in a poor way?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, credit history is super important. So if you can help it, keep your credit facilities open.
Mm-hmm.
The only other side of the coin I would say is if you are someone who's impulsive, it
Mm.
happens. Look, I've got a bunch of like figurines and stuff. I'm pretty impulsive. If you're somebody who like struggles with that impulsive nature and you can't have that card, of
Mm-hmm.
course, that is going to come first. Your credit score can come after. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
credit history is super important. So keeping those um, credit facilities open, because like I had said earlier, like your credit is essentially like showing lenders how likely you are to pay back a loan. So having
Mm-hmm.
that history on there is super important. And by the way, when you
Mm-hmm.
close something on your credit, it doesn't, like, it still shows up in your credit that it existed,
Mm-hmm.
but you're no longer kind of maintaining that history. The history doesn't really go away immediately. There is a period of
Mm-hmm.
time when things disappear from your credit, which I believe is 7 years. I could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong on that. But so it's good to have that history. The revolving credit utilization, like I said earlier, that's an important thing that people kind of take for granted and don't know. That's something I didn't know. It doesn't seem like it
Mm-hmm.
would be important, but yeah, how much of your revolving credit are you using? And that's just not
Mm-hmm.
credit cards. Revolving credit is any money that you can borrow and pay back and borrow again. So
Mm-hmm.
student line of credit, credit card, a regular line of credit, a homeowner line of credit, that's all revolving credit. So when you think about your utilization, take all of those, add the balance up, take all of those, add the limit up, and find your percentage. And of course, your credit report will tell you all this information as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that is important, like I said, good habits, checking your credit. That's a mistake that people don't do. This They don't check. And checking is good for a couple of reasons. I don't know if anybody, and maybe you've been in this situation where you
Mm-hmm.
go to apply for something and maybe you don't know what your score is. Aren't you just
Mm-hmm.
like sweating profusely? You're like, am I gonna get approved? Like, are they gonna
Mm-hmm.
take me away somewhere? Like, that's how I always
Yeah.
felt when I didn't know my credit. I was like sweating and
Mhm.
stressed. and you get like a pit in your stomach. So checking is
Mhm.
good for that reason as well, peace of mind, financial empowerment,
Mhm.
but also to kind of avoid any fraud or anything like that. Another common misconception too is that the way late payments work,
Mm.
people think if you miss your payment by a day, it's going to affect your credit, which isn't necessarily true. If you miss a payment by a day, that place you missed the payment with might charge you a late fee. That's one of the kind of negative outcomes. Where it comes to play with your credit is if you miss a payment for more than 30 days. So
Mhm.
it's kind of showing that you've missed the whole statement period. Kind of the same thing I was saying about like paying your credit card and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
those are a couple of common mistakes that people make and kind of ways that you can hurt your credit.
Mhm.
Of course, the exact opposite of that is the ways that you can build your credit, making your payments on time, making sure your utilization is down, having good credit history. These are all factors that weigh heavily on your credit. Canada has two credit reporting systems, Equifax and TransUnion, where
Yep.
your credit score will vary throughout them. And
Mhm.
if you ever have, like, for example, Credit Coach, it'll tell you exactly where they're pulling your credit report from. It
Mhm.
could be, you don't necessarily have to do this every month, but it could be beneficial once a year to check both places, Equifax and TransUnion. I find in
Mhm.
my like I said, I've been a banker for years, so I did a bunch of mortgages and I looked at a
Mhm.
bunch of credit reports on both sides. They're usually pretty similar. The
Mhm.
weighting can be a little bit different, but it's a good
Mhm.
habit to kind of have. But yeah, I'm sweating right now thinking about applying for something and not knowing my credit scores. I don't even have to
Yeah.
do it.
I mean, like, I'm a gamer, so like, I gotta say, like, the way I check my credit score is kind of like I make it like almost like a video game. I'm just like, I just like check it every now and then to see, okay, what's my progress bar? What's my XP bar looking like so far? Oh, did it go down a little bit? Okay, like, what did I do maybe that month that maybe caused my thing to go down maybe 10 points or something like that? Oh, I spent over 30% of what I usually spend, or my credit card utilization is, to be like, okay, then I have to like, it's kind of like signaling to myself that, oh, I need to like maintain, repaying back my credit card a little bit more often, keeping that utilization lower, or maybe, just in general, not spend too much on those impulsive expenditures, as students my age are so common for. But yeah, but it's also okay. Like, I want to put it out there that, your credit score is going to fluctuate every now and then, right? And
Oh, for
that's
sure.
totally normal. Like, just because it goes down a couple points does not mean, oh, it's going to stay there forever and that's like a big issue, right? It's
That's
always
a good point.
between TransUnion, Equifax, like, it's going to fluctuate every now and then. So like, that's totally normal. Now, when it goes down like a lot, like you're going from maybe like 800, 700, or even 600, 650, that's maybe when you have to be like, okay, there's something going on. Is there fraud happening? Or what's really making my points drop down so much and staying there consistently, right? But then again, going back to, this question about expenditure too, with using credit cards and, budgeting as well, I feel like a lot of times, during when I turned freshly 18, and I started having like my own budget, and my started looking at my income a little bit more closely and my personal finance a little more closely, was this question of, how do I budget? Like, how do I manage to like, how much do I manage my spending? And what percentage of my income should go into like savings or like expenses and then funds? So what would be your kind of recommendation for that?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, like, you're, actually, before we even answer that, I wanted to let you know, like, about the credit fluctuation thing.
Hmm.
Your credit score can change without you doing anything too. Like,
Yeah,
your credit score,
100%.
like, it could go down 2 points. You're like, I didn't do anything differently. My
Hmm.
credit's been the same. Like, that just happens with reporting. That's not like a bad thing.
Hmm.
I read up on this a little bit ago because my credit score went down like 5 points, and
Hmm.
I was actually in a better position. And
Hmm.
it's just something that happens. So if it
Hmm.
fluctuates a little bit, whatever, not important. But
Hmm.
yes, budgeting is super important. When we think about budgeting, like, think about it like you're playing Diablo or something,
Hmm.
or you're playing League of Legends. Budgeting is you planning your
Mm.
build, right? Because so all of your
Mhm.
goals kind of revolve around budgeting.
Mhm.
Because budgeting is another kind of financial empowerment tool that lets you know where exactly you stand with your money. So budgeting is super important, even if you don't have any kind of financial goals coming up. It's super important because it kind of takes the guessing out of finances. Because we're kind of in this age where if I forget my debit card at home, I can use my phone. I can tap. I don't even need to look at the amount. If I'm buying a coffee or something, I can just tap, walk away and be like, I'm sure that's fine. But those kind of things add up, and you could unknowingly be spending way more money than you mean to. It's super easy to do. It's also not something to be upset about because we all do it.
Mhm.
Well, maybe not all of us, but most of us probably do it. I've never met anybody who's perfect with their finances. But
True,
budgeting
true.
allows you to kind of be more knowledgeable about it. So basically, your budget starts with how much money am I bringing in? So, what is my income? Do I have a job? Are my parents sending me money? Do I have a student loan? How much money am I bringing in on a monthly basis versus how much money am I spending? And the common rule of thumb when it comes to budgeting is the 50-30-20 rule. Okay. This is just a
Mhm.
rule of thumb. It doesn't mean that your budget is going to look the same as anybody else's, because I can tell you 100% that when I was in my early 20s, I was spending way more than I was making out of necessity.
Uh-huh.
And the
Mhm.
economy right now is kind of in a place where that could happen very easily. So, what is the 50-30-20 rule? So, when we're coming to your budgets, like we're thinking about certain things, and this is specifically towards how much of your income you're spending. So, 50% of your income should, in a perfect world, be going to necessities. So that's things like shelter, food, your car, utilities, things like that. These things often fluctuate too. Like, I don't think I've ever seen my heat bill come in and it's the same each month. So there are
Mhm.
kind of fluctuating expenses there, but in a perfect world, 50% goes towards necessities, 30% goes towards wants, which is pretty sick. I actually think about this a
Mhm.
lot. This general rule of thumb. We're putting more towards our wants than our savings. Like, that's pretty dope.
Mhm.
That's why I have so much manga. So
Okay.
so 30% should go to wants. So
Mhm.
that's things that you might not necessarily need. Like, maybe you want a new outfit. For us gamers, usually it's 30% of our income goes towards whatever Steam sale is happening.
True.
So
Oh, so
30%.
real.
It's brutal. It's every day for me. I found Tales of Symphonia. I'm old, by the way, but I found Tales of Symphonia for $5 on Steam
It's
yesterday.
just like, "Ooh,
And I
I
was
love
like,
myself a good deal."
it's $5, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Um,
Mhm.
so 30% could go to wants. That's the good news. And then 20% should hypothetically go to savings. So
Yes.
that doesn't mean, by the way, savings doesn't mean a savings account. Savings means
Mhm.
you're saving it for something. So that could
Mhm.
be a savings account, an investment account that you could save technically in your checking account, but that
Mhm.
your money's not doing anything for you in that kind of instance. But
Mhm.
20% should go towards savings. What I mean by this is a general rule of thumb. First and foremost, look at where we are kind of in the economy right now. Groceries are more expensive than they've kind of ever been. Housing is
Mhm.
not affordable. Rent is super expensive. So, how likely is it that we are all collectively spending
Mhm.
50% of our income towards necessities? It's more likely we're spending
Mhm.
like 80, 70, 90, some instances, maybe even 100. I know,
Mhm.
I'm very budget stringent, and I know that
Mhm.
with inflation and everything afterwards, I'm probably way over 50%. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
30% going towards wants, like, in a perfect world, 30% is enough for everything that you want, but maybe what you want now is getting more expensive as well. Like video games, with kind of the technological advancements that are happening right now, it's kind of
Mhm.
impossible to get RAM or memory, right?
Oh my,
Um,
don't
so
don't
the,
even don't even talk
I'm
about RAM right
sorry, I
now
didn't
with
mean to
me.
make you
Oh
sad.
my, this is like a PTSD topic right now for me, RAM. Oh my god, I literally, like, this is like completely off topic right now. I looked at RAM prices like literally like a month ago, and I was just
Yeah,
like, absolutely not. I was like, I cannot afford this. So now I'm just sad. I'm just waiting for the prices to go down more, but like I
yeah,
don't even know
and
if that's gonna happen.
you know what? I think you're going to be waiting a while, because a lot
Yeah.
of what's happening, from what I've been reading, is it's a lot of companies trying to set up their infrastructure for where
Mm.
technology is going, because it's kind of
AI
an
and
unavoidable thing that is happening, that companies are seeing the value in this, so they're going
mhm.
to try to set themselves up to kind of future proof. It's just a part of the economy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm actually sitting pretty. I have a bunch of like hard drives around. I used to build computers, so I've RAM everywhere. Like, don't come rob my house or anything.
I mean, don't talk to me, Sean, because right now it just feels like you're
it's
flexing
gonna
on me. You're
it's gonna be
flexing
the
me.
currency in the future. We're all gonna be trading
This feels
RAM
like
and
you're
stuff.
flexing on a toddler right now because I
Oh
don't
yeah.
have like a fixed income. And you're just like, yeah, look at all these RAM hardware that I
Well,
have. You're never gonna be able to afford. Like, oh,
well,
you
here's the
know,
thing though. I bought all this RAM when it wasn't super expensive. So
future
it's
proofing,
yeah,
future
and
proofing.
it wasn't on purpose at all. It was just kind of like I was building, my computer and helping my friends with their
Hmm.
computers and all this kind of stuff. So it just happened to work out that way. And in no means can I afford RAM now. Even being as financially savvy as I am, I think my computer where it is probably gonna go without any kind of updates for a while.
I
So
mean, like to be fair, like that's like investing into yourself, right? You're buying early, you're investing early in order to see those returns later on. And I think
right,
that's exactly what, investing with your money to your disposable income, any extra cash that you have is important as well. We talk about these different ways that you can save and different ways that you can invest. So the main ways is like other than, just having your money in your checking account, maybe as like an emergency fund to like take out on a rainy day if something happens, god forbid you lose all your ways of making it money, your income
right.
streams, and like you'll have some extra money on the side to at least like maybe last you hopefully for another 2 3 months if you have that much money saved up in your checkings per se. But another ways that we can do for savings is opening those savings account. There's two major savings accounts or types of savings account from my knowledge, and it's between a TFSA, your tax-free savings account, that's available via your financial institution of choice. But this case, we got BMO. And the other way that was introduced a couple years ago was actually it's called a first home savings account. That's for later on if you decide to buy a house. But touching first on TFSA, which I think is like the more prevalent one, the more well-known, more used one. Could give me a little breakdown of what the TFSA is. Like how does it work? What are these limits? And how can someone really open a TFSA to make the most out of their money?
So first and foremost, the government has tricked all of you. The TFSA and the FHSA are not savings accounts. They have savings accounts in them, and they're called
Mm-hmm.
savings accounts, but they're actually kind of investment umbrellas.
Mm-hmm.
They do have savings accounts attached to them, and I think that's probably why the government labeled them as
Mm-hmm.
TFSA, FHSA. But they're
Mm-hmm.
actually more like investment accounts. There are savings portions of them. Apologies. When it comes to
Bless
like
you.
saving, first and foremost, before we dive into like, how you can open a TFSA and that kind of thing, there's a couple
Mhm,
of kind of nuances to think about. First and foremost is what am I saving for? So what's my financial goal? Do I want to buy a house? Do I want to save for a rainy day? Do I want to buy a car? What exactly am I saving for? That's
mhm,
going to inform you how you should be saving, especially when it comes to choosing which account you're going to use. So
mhm,
hypothetically, let's say save for a rainy day. I'm saving for the future. I don't have a specific goal in mind. I might go towards a TFSA, a tax-free savings accounts. These accounts, by the way, when I say the government came up with them, is because
mhm,
there is some sort of tax implication that comes with the registered accounts. And there's basically three, I guess, four main registered accounts. There's more than that, of course. We don't need to go through all of them, but
mhm,
tax free savings account, first home savings account, RRSP, which is a registered retirement savings account. Sorry, I
mhm.
just choked on my own spit.
Okay.
And then there's an RESP, which is a registered education savings plan.
Mhm,
So the difference between those, like they have different tax implications, but for specifically the tax-free savings account, it does exactly what it's kind of named. Whenever
mhm,
you invest in that, any money that you make in that account is tax-free. Even when you pull
mhm,
it out, it's tax-free. So what does
mhm.
that mean? So when I said earlier that the tax-free savings account is like, I don't know, I'm doing a box. How do you draw an umbrella? It's like an
Like a
umbrella.
little curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could basically like you could have just a savings account in there. The interest rate on the savings account is going to be very minuscule. But you could
Mhm,
have a savings account on there. Savings accounts aren't inherently bad. They're good for very, very short-term goals because if when you get into like investing and stuff, there's risk associated with it. It could fluctuate. Savings account is a good place to have kind of accessible liquid cash that's not going to
mhm,
fluctuate. It's only going to go up because it's gaining interest. But because and you know what? I'm actually not. Let me just see. the interest is very minuscule.
Mhm.
Interest saving, I think it was 0.05 or something like that,
It's
but it's been
something
a
it's
while.
something generally speaking is like for the bigger banks in Canada from my to my knowledge, the savings accounts are the interest is not super high, but it's also because you're kind of it's the stability of it's a big institution. Smaller institutions will have like higher like saving like interest rates to my knowledge.
Hmm.
But then also it's because like they're small institutions, so there's less it's not to say it's like not secure at all,
Right.
but it's just like you have the guarantee of a bigger institution making sure like and also just like a fun fact for people, Canada has actually some of the strongest financial institutions in the world. So you're making sure like, oh, in those in the situation where like your money will just be safe. So
Right.
yeah.
But
Makes
let's say
sense. Makes sense.
hypothetically, and I'll double check this, but I believe
Hmm.
it's 0.05% for a savings portion of a TFSA. That could be wrong. I just
Hmm.
realized now that I haven't been checking interest rates as much as I should. But let's say hypothetically it's 0.05%. You're actually not
Hmm.
making a ton of money. And in Canada, if you don't make over $50 in an investment, you're actually not being taxed on that dollars,
Hmm.
on that money. So if it's under $50, you're not being taxed. So you're not super taking full advantage of a tax-free savings account if you're only making less than $50 a year in interest,
Yeah.
because that money
Hmm.
would be tax-free just sitting in a regular savings account.
Hmm.
Um, but where the tax-free savings kind of shines is you can do other things. You can invest in GICs. GICs are guaranteed investment certificates. They're kind of an
Hmm.
older way of investing. GICs are locked in for a period of time. So hypothetically, a year, and you get an interest rate for that period of time your money is locked in. So you know
Hmm.
exactly where your money is going to be by the time it unlocks,
Hmm.
but it's locked in. So if I need it tomorrow, I can't use it. If I need
Hmm.
it a year from now and it comes up in a year, we're sitting pretty. Another
Hmm.
thing is like stocks, equities,
Bonds. Hmm.
bonds, or mutual funds and
Yep.
ETFs. Mutual funds and ETFs are a collection of all those things like stocks, equities,
Yes.
bonds, those kind
Hmm.
of things. They're kind of like a pool of investments that you can invest in. The thing with mutual funds, ETFs, stocks, bonds is they fluctuate.
Hmm.
So this is where kind of how comfortable you are with risk kind of comes to play. Like if you're a player and you're playing a game, I know a lot of people who play Marvel Rivals, maybe not on a competitive stage, are very much like I'm DPS, I'm going in, you know, which I would consider high risk because if you're DPS
Hmm.
and thinking you're going to Rambo a whole team, it's
Hmm.
not going to happen. But high risk associated with investment is because of investments fluctuate. So not only do they
Yes.
go up, they go down. What is a way to mitigate kind of fluctuation or volatility? Time. So
Hmm.
that's why your goals are kind of hyper dependent on what you're going to invest in. So that's why I call registered accounts. They're not technically savings accounts. They're investment umbrellas. Like they're technically investment accounts.
Hmm.
But the TFSA is good for if you want to invest money and you don't want to pay taxes on any of the interest that you make, because any of the money that you make off of interest or investments is taxable income.
Hmm.
An FHSA, if your goal is you want to buy a house, that's the account you're going to use. The
Hmm.
FHSA is a relatively new investment account, although every time I say that, I have to look back. How old am I?
It's been like 2 years now,
Yeah,
3 years,
it's
something
still
like
relative.
that.
It's relatively newer than
Mhm,
most investment accounts. I guess it's
mhm,
been around for a couple of
100%,
years.
100%.
I
Mhm.
actually used an FHSA to buy my house. So an
Mm,
FHSA, the purpose of it is to invest for the purpose of buying your first home, which is why it's called a first home savings account. Just like a tax-free savings, any money that you put in there, any interest that is earned is tax-free. You
mhm,
also get the benefit of what's called a tax deductible. So any money that I put in there when it grows is not only tax-free, but any money that I contribute to it, I don't have to pay taxes on. I would say at all, but there might be
mhm,
some nuance there. But I don't
mhm,
really have to pay taxes on. So I get a receipt. I put, maybe I put $500 in my FHSA. I get a receipt saying I put $500 in there. I don't have to pay taxes on $500 this year. Pretty
mhm,
nice, which means I might get a return. And it stays that way as long as you use that money to buy a house, your first house. You got
mhm,
to be a first time home buyer, which is
mhm,
kind of another kind of nuance there. So
mhm,
registered say investment accounts, like they have their benefits. When it comes to investing, I get a lot of questions of like, what should I invest in? What's the best way to invest? And I could go out and
mhm,
say, this stock is the best stock in the world to buy. But because I'm not all omnipotent and can't see the future, it could crash tomorrow. And it's also
mhm,
hyper dependent on what your goal is. would I say invest in something super risky that has the potential to make you a lot of money, but also has the potential to lose you a bunch of money if you're using it to buy a car tomorrow?
Mhm.
Probably not. So, um,
Mhm.
just keep that in mind. I find a lot of people, not just me, they'll be like, what's the best thing to invest in? They'll go on Google, they'll look up a stock that's been performing pretty well.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden it tanks. Actually, fun fact, I can't say names, but I invested
Mm.
in a stock
Mhm.
that went up significantly
Mhm.
over the period of like a week. And then somebody basically took a look at the company and said, that stock's not worth that. And then it went down. So in the span of a day, it was way up here and then way down here. So
Mhm.
always good to be cognizant of how comfortable you are with risk. I like to look at, when I'm playing Dark Souls, am I actually leveling to a point where I feel comfortable fighting a boss, or am I just going in and throwing myself at the wall, fighting that boss over and over again? That's a good way to gauge how
Mhm.
comfortable you are with risk. Money's a little bit
Mhm.
different because unlike Dark Souls, it's real life. Unless real
Mhm.
life is Dark Souls, that'd be pretty cool. No, it wouldn't. Actually, that would be horrifying. I
I think
forget
that
I
would
ever
be
said
really
that.
scary. I was gonna say, I was like, I feel like if it's real life Dark Souls, I might just stay at home the entire day. I'm never
Yeah,
gonna go
never
out
leave your
ever.
house. Yeah.
No, no, no. But yeah, no. But anyways, like also for like the viewers, we talked a lot about these like we used to kind of like jargon of investing, but in general, investing is very over. It's kind of complicated. There's definitely a lot to learn from it, but then sometimes you don't have the maybe knowledge or the necessary expertise to really do any of these like self-directed kind of investment accounts, whether that's TFSA or FHSA. So if that's you, then you can always go to schedule an appointment with a financial advisor with your local BMO branch or like whatever financial institution that you are with. They are able to help you assess what kind of risk you are suited for, whether that's you're a very, very safe investor, you don't feel comfortable losing money at all, or if you're super, super open to, okay, I'm okay to lose all my money when I'm investing, then obviously they can also give you some advice for that. And if you don't want to do any of the investing yourself, there's always going to be options for TFSA accounts or FHSA accounts that are managed by the bank themselves. So they make decision for you based on your risk assessment and then go off of there, so you don't really have to care about it too much. But again, if you are a little bit more savvy, a little bit more knowledgeable about investment, then maybe you want to go for more of a self-directed investment account in that sense. But there's also a distinction between TFSA, FHSA. They have what we call a contribution limit as well as a rollover time period. To correct me if I'm wrong, but for FHSA in particular, there is a lifetime contribution of $40,000, and each year you get, I believe, either $7,000 or $800,000 of contribution limit. And from the day you open the account, you have 15 years to max it out, and there's a rollover period of 1 year. For TFSA, it is continuous. You're going to have, depending on the year, you have different contribution limit. But talk about why we should invest that money early and put money and like leave it in there instead of just putting it in there for 1 year and then kind of taking it out after the next year to buy something. It's something called compound interest. So like, Sean, can you explore what is compounded interest? Why is that really good for your compounded return? And how can someone leverage maybe keeping their money in longer in these accounts rather than just putting in for a short amount of time and taking out right away?
Yeah. First and foremost, yeah. So I just want to touch basically on contribution limits for the
Mm-hmm.
FHSA. It's $8,000 a year, a
Mm-hmm.
lifetime maximum of 40,000. The your contribution room does carry forward. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to clear this because this was. I remember when it came out, I was like, "This is so confusing. Why is it worded this way?"
Yes.
So
Yes. Mm-hmm.
every year you can carry forward $8,000
Mm-hmm.
up to a maximum of $16,000 contribution
Mm-hmm.
room. So if I don't contribute $8,000 this year and then I don't contribute next year and maybe I
Mm-hmm.
go 5 years without contributing, it's still only $16,000 because you can't,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't compound where it's like, oh, you can do carry forward this 8,000, this 8,000, this. It's only basically 2 years. So
Which is
8,000.
different compared to TFSA, right?
Right. Whereas it's
Mm-hmm.
based on your age, it usually goes up like 5,500, 5,000, 6,000. It depends on when
Mm.
you turn the age of majority in your province and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, like when it comes to like leaving your money in compound interest, like when we're talking about investing and doing things of that nature, first and foremost, like timing is something I kind of alluded to. Is it someone's birthday?
Is it?
I don't know. Someone in the chat said happy birthday.
I was like, what? Oh,
uh,
maybe it's Lexi's for happy birthday, Lexi. If you're
Happy
watching, maybe
birthday,
it's her birthday.
Lexi. I
Happy birthday!
as
Shout
much
out
as
to
I want to talk
Lexi
about compound interest, I didn't want to skimp on someone's birthday.
for
Um,
sure.
So, as we kind of talked about before, like fluctuation, the
Mhm.
reason you kind of don't want to pull your money out of an investment right away, especially if it's like you're at a loss, like maybe you lost like $500 or something huge. You don't want to pull
Mhm.
it right away because you actually realize that loss. When you go into like, I invest on InvestorLine, that's our like self investment platform.
Mhm.
There's a couple of columns. The one column is unrealized loss. So if my
Mm.
investment is down 6%, it's called an unrealized loss because I didn't pull that money out. It's still
Mhm.
invested. It has an opportunity to recover or grow. Of
Mhm.
course, it could go the other way as well. It could
Yeah.
go down
Mhm.
more because I didn't pull that money out. I didn't actually lose anything necessarily.
Mhm.
Compound interest is kind of taking your money that you've invested, the interest that you've earned, and reinvesting it into a fund. So you're
Mhm.
basically like not only making your money work for you, but whatever income that you've generated is now also working towards whatever goal you are working towards. So that's kind of a part of the unrealized loss as well.
Mhm.
Um, Timing is important, but I want everybody to know that timing isn't always perfect.
Mm.
I can't tell you that, if this is your goal, invest for a year and you'll make this much money, unless the interest rate is like firm.
Mhm.
So it's important to know that there's never, I get this question a lot, and it's actually something I think about a lot too. There's never a perfect time to know whether or not you should pull money out of an investment.
Mhm.
Like when a stock is up, is that a good time to pull money out? It could potentially be, but hypothetically, what if that stock goes up double the next day? Like you'll
Mhm.
never know it. And also, past performance is never indicative
Mhm.
of future performance. So if something's doing really well, that doesn't mean it's going to continue to do well for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
But where this idea of like compounding interest goes in, like over time, as you kind of invest more money into your investment, it will grow.
Mhm.
Hypothetically, unless a company tanks or whatever, depending on what you're investing in,
Yeah.
you can't. It's kind of a tricky subject. Like you don't want to necessarily say investing is a bad thing,
Mhm.
because it's not. There's a lot of potential there, but that's where risk kind of comes into play, like how comfortable you are with risk. And usually, like if you go back and like, I mean, you can Google any kind of stock market or anything like that, you can kind of see where the graph is, the dips, the lulls, maybe
Mm.
that like 2008, there was the housing crisis, which was a
Yeah.
huge dip for a lot of people. And a lot of people panic pulled their money out
Mhm.
and ended up realizing a lot of loss. But over time, there could have potentially been that recovery. So
Mm.
timing is not perfect. It's something that you'll learn. Like it's not instinctual. Do I wish that stock I was talking about earlier I would have pulled out when it was up? Sure. Do I beat myself up about it? No, because I had no idea that
Mhm.
some random person was going to say it's actually not worth that much, and then it would go down. So.
Mhm. And speaking about timing as well, we're about to get to the end of our panel, but you also mentioned a little bit before, I go into the final question. You mentioned about like it's really important when you're investing or savings that you have like a goal, right? You have kind of you
Mhm.
plan it through, you know what you're kind of investing towards or maybe saving towards, and for what I learned about the FHSA in particular, because it's for primarily the goal is you want to buy a house with the FHSA. That's the whole point. You like invest it into it. But then if you like take it out for the reasons of not buying a house, and obviously there's going to have some negative implications towards your taxes in the future. But if you like keep it there for like a long time, and then let's say for example I don't end up buying a house, then what happens to that money? Well, I learned from, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, my knowledge may not be up there. So I learned that, that actually that amount that you contribute into your FHSA actually just rolls over into your RSP, your retirement. So
Yeah.
then it's not the end of the world if your financial goals do end up changing. There's always other options that you can go forward. There's other ways that your money can kind of work for you or at least like be used like in the future, right? And then I mean, going to this final question, what are some kind of final advice, like the main advice that you would give to yourself? Let's say you're looking at a mirror, your 20-year-old self is there, what would be the biggest or final piece of financial advice that you would give that 20-year-old self of Sean Frame?
I would tell him the lottery numbers. No, I just
Yeah. Can you
here's the thing.
imagine?
Yeah. So I mean, here's what I think. Like honestly, kind of all kind of financial information aside, I think there's
Mm-hmm.
a huge stigma around talking about finances,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense. I feel like a lot of people go out and they compare themselves to other people. Like this person has this huge, gorgeous house. They're the same
Mhm.
age as me. Maybe they're in a similar field. Like there's a lot of like kind of bad negative feelings attached to that. And I think if we all talked about money more, we would realize first and foremost that we're all kind of in different financial situations, but there's such a good opportunity to learn from each other by kind of destigmatizing talking about finances. Financial literacy is super important. Like I said, there's not one way to learn financial literacy, and a lot of the times it's kind of like on the ownership of your parents to kind of teach you as you grow or to learn
Mhm.
yourself by doing. But I think destroying that stigma is something that could potentially help as well. So if I
Mhm.
was 20, I remember, my credit card was maxed out. It was about to be sent to collections.
Mhm.
And I just felt super, ashamed about it. Of course, I think a lot of people would, and a lot of people probably do. But I realized that I should have talked to somebody because
Mhm.
there's like you kind of talked about with your investments rolling over and stuff like that. There
Mhm.
is options,
Mhm.
especially like for example, if I would have known to talk about what was happening with my credit card, they could have put me on a payment plan where interest was less. They could have potentially paused my payments for a period of time so that I had time to recover, or I could have skipped a payment before my payments were in arrears. Like there's always options, but you don't really know these options because there's so much information out there when it comes to finances. So unless you actually sit down and talk about it, you'll never know. So
Mhm.
I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned throughout my life is just as embarrassing as it may be, it's good to
Mhm.
talk about finances. Is it good to gloat about it? I mean, if you want, it might make other people feel bad, but definitely
Mhm.
destigmatizing and talking about it, having a budget, also including other people in your budget. Like if you have a family that live with you, like include them in your budget. If you have a young child like I do, talk to them about finances. Like just make it a natural thing.
Mhm.
Um, because there's a very gut reaction when anybody asks you a question about your money where it's like, that's too personal. And it could potentially be, but it's
Mhm.
important to remember to talk about it. It's like anything else, right?
Mhm.
Talking through it is usually the first step, and then kind of formulating a plan and learning and that kind of thing. So
100%. And I think that's exactly, as you said, there are resources for people who are young, like my age, or, I'm not saying you're old, okay? Like, don't get me the wrong way. Okay, but there's definitely resources for people who are not well versed in financial literacy, to take advantage of. And that's exactly what BMO Next Level you guys are doing there, with not just a gaming channel, but also a resource or a option or a learning avenue to learn about any questions that you have of financial literacy, get them answered. And if anyone, of course, like this panel about financial literacy is only an hour long, but we can go
right.
on and on. We can do an entire sleep podcast that's 12 hours long, just purely talking about financial literacy. That is how big and how over encompassing this topic is. And if you guys did have any specific questions that weren't really quite answered in this podcast or anything like that, you can always visit, linktree/, BMO NXTLVL with Sean Frame. They do have a Discord there where you can ask any of your financial literacy questions, anything about budgeting, investment, etc. Sean is going to be that teacher there for you and everybody else too, just in case you needed it. But yeah, and other than that, BMO has also just in general, as you guys heard throughout the entirety of CIE, BMO and BMO and XTLVL, BMO Next Level, they have been the main sponsors for CIE and making this event possible and bringing you guys these lovely panels that we see right now as well. So I just want to take the time to say thank you so much, Sean, for not only
Oh, of
supporting
course.
collegiate esports as it's like in its entirety, but also providing us the opportunity to talk about a topic that is personally very close to my heart. Always love financial literacy. Personal finance has always been my personal passion. So definitely a very entertaining talk. And if you guys have any other questions, again, reach out to them through Discord or anything in their link tree. They also sometimes have some Twitch, streams that happen too. So you can always ask those questions there. And yeah, my name was Zaleen Razikin. And thank you so much for joining us for this panel. And we are going to head out now. Goodbye.
Bye. Okay, buddy. What were you gonna say?